So step number one is going to be opening the TP3 file in Topcon Office 3D, and we're going to export out the file formats that we need. So the first thing you need to do is go up to the project tab and look at your control points. Okay, now this is going to open up and show you what points were used in the localization. And you can see there's a handful of them here with horizontal, vertical errors. You can choose the localization tab and you can see that there's actually some information here. So if you don't see any information in these two tabs, you don't have the actual localization, you're going to need to get that. So if this information here is good, you can cancel out of this and you can go back to the project tab and you're going to export control points. So you're going to go to a text file. Now, by default, there will probably be a text exporter, but we're going to export these as a CSV. So in order to make that available, you have to create a new format. So if I just go ahead and edit this, I'll show you um, what the lines need to be in here. So you need to call it something CSV, and then your file extension is going to be CSV, and then you have to add each one of these line items in the correct format. So you got point name, northing, easting, elevation, and description. So you're going to make one for CSV, and you're also going to make one for the GPS coordinates, the latitude and longitude. So I'll edit that one, and then you'll see the settings for this one. So I called this one GPS. I'm also going to export this in CSV format, and the line items need to be exactly like this. So you have point name, your WGS 84, latitude, longitude, and height, and then a description if needed. So just make sure you have these two custom format definitions made before you start, because you're going to need to export the points out using this. So after you create those, you're going to go back to, I'm going to export these as a CSV. I'm going to hit next, and it's going to ask me where I want these to go. So I'm going to go back into the spot where I have these saved. I'm going to put it into this format, and I typically will just leave this the same, collegesquares.csv, and hit save, and then hit finish. Okay, then that's going to export me out the CSV, and I'm going to open that up just to double check and make sure I got what I wanted, and that is correct. Now in this case, I don't need this base, so I'll probably just go ahead and delete that out of there, because I'm not going to necessarily need that point for the site calibration. So I can just delete that out of there and just make sure everything else looks the same, and then close out of this. Now I'm going to also go back into project again, and I'm going to go to export control points to a text file, and I'm going to now do the GPS coordinates, which are the latitudes and longitudes. Hit next. I'm going to go back to that same spot. Now in this case, I'm going to put a different description under this. I'm just going to call this GPS so I can differentiate between the grid coordinates and the global coordinates. I'm going to hit save and then hit finish. Okay, now I'm going to also open this one up to double check what I have here. And now you can see I have the latitude, longitude, and height. And in this case, I can also get rid of this base. I could delete this out of here as well and resave the file. So one other thing to do here is change the point names on the GPS coordinates. So just go through each one of these in Excel and just put an underscore GPS after each one of these points to make sure that they are not duplicated. So we have grid points with the same name, so we're going to just put the GPS after each one of these so that they are not duplicated. So the next step is going to be to export the Linework and the surface. So first thing I'll do here is go to the tin tab up top, and I'm going to say export the current tin surface to an AutoCAD file. So we're going to go ahead and click that, and it's going to ask us where we want to save that. So I'm just going to go ahead and save that, and I'm going to call this College Square, and then I'm also going to call this the surface. So I usually put this after it so I know that this is the surface file, and I'm going to save it as an AutoCAD 2000 DWG or a DXF. So I typically save these as DXFs, but you could do either or. So I'm going to save this as College Square Surface and hit save. Okay, now that is exported to my computer, and now I'm going to go into the Linework tab, and I'm going to click on select all line work, and then I'm going to go back to the line work tab and say export selected line work to AutoCAD file. Okay, it's going to take me back to that same folder. I'm going to go to the DXF here. I'm going to click on this one, and I'm just going to change this description to line work and hit save. Okay, so now if I look at my folder where I'm exporting everything, I now have a Linework DXF, a Surface DXF, my grid coordinates in a CSV, and my GPS coordinates in a CSV. So I'm ready to take this data now into Trimble Business Center. So next we're going to take those files and bring those into Trimble Business Center to compute the site calibration and make the correct files. So there's a few things we need to do when we set up this job. So we need to make sure when we start this project, we are using the US survey foot template. So you're going to create a new file. So you come in here, you hit new, and you're going to make sure you're either just using US survey foot. I have a custom template, so I'm going to use my US survey foot template and hit OK. The next thing we want to do is go to the Home tab and go to the Import Format Editor. So we're going to hit the bottom part of this button, go to the Import Format Editor, and we're going to make sure that our global importer is set up correctly. So we're going to highlight point, latitude, longitude, height, code, global. We're going to edit this. So we're going to hit next, leave this the same, hit next and leave this the same. And on this third tab, we're going to make sure that latitude and longitude are set to degrees, minutes, and seconds. If you've never done this before, it might be set to decimal degrees by default. So we need to make sure that this is set to units, degrees, minutes, and seconds. Longitude is units, degrees, minutes, and seconds. Ellipsoid height, you can just leave. This one has also the ability to choose the units, but we're just going to leave this as display like that. And feature code, we're going to leave that alone and just hit finish. So now we know that we have our importer set correctly. We can also go ahead and just double check our control. So this is point, northing, easting, elevation, code under control. So this is the other one we're going to use. So we could hit next and just double check these, and you can see here northing, easting, elevation. We shouldn't have to make any changes here, so I'll just go ahead and hit cancel. So those are the two imports that we're going to use, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in my coordinates from the CSV file. So I'm just going to go ahead and drag and drop in my GPS CSV, and the program's going to recognize that as the point ID, latitude, longitude, and height. And you can see my point IDs have the GPS tags that we made before. And I'm just going to go ahead and hit import. Now, when this window pops up, it's going to be looking for the coordinate, the northing and easting of global point 2 GPS. So it says enter the best known grid coordinates for point 2 GPS. So what I'm going to do is just go to my CSV that has those coordinates, and I'm going to copy and paste the northing and easting for point number 2. So I'm just on my other screen here, I'm copying the northing, and I'm going to paste that in here. I'm going to grab the easting, and I'm going to copy and paste the easting. So essentially just putting the northing and easting for point number 2 GPS in there. So that's the latitude, longitude of that point, and this is the northing and easting of that point. So I'm going to hit OK, and I'll see my points pop up on the screen. So next I'm going to grab my grid CSV. I'm going to drag and drop that in. It's going to recognize that it's point, northing, easting, elevation, code, control. So we're just going to go ahead, double check. Everything looks good down here. I'm going to hit import. Okay, now you can see that these points, they fall relatively close to each other here. The calibration isn't completed, but what we're going to do now is match each one of these points up with each other. So we're going to go to the survey tab and we're going to click on site calibration. Okay, we're going to go ahead and leave these settings by default: horizontal calibration and a vertical calibration, vertical shift, and incline plane. So the Topcon uses a vertical shift and incline plane. So we're going to mimic that with our site calibration, and then we're going to click on point lists. So in this case here, it's going to ask us for our GNSS GPS point and our grid point. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to click any one of these points. So I'm going to start on 2 GPS. I'm clicking it on the screen, and I'm going to type in 2 and hit enter on my keypad, and it's going to take me down to the next one. So now I can do each one of these kind of in, it doesn't really matter which direction I go here or which order. So I'm just going to choose this one. This is 9 underscore GPS, and I'm going to type in a 9 and hit enter. And I'm just going to go through each one of these and put in the corresponding points. Okay, so once you get them all in there, just make sure that you have horizontal and vertical turned on. And this is important to check with your Topcon calibration too, because sometimes there may be points that use horizontal only or vertical only. So just make sure that you have the same settings for each point, the same in both products. So if you just had a vertical on point number 2, you can say vertical only or horizontal only. So that's your drop down. You can change that setting there. But once you have everything matched up properly, you can hit the compute button, and it's going to tell you here my horizontal scale factor is 1.0000, and we're going to double check that and make sure that that matches the Topcon calibration as well. You'll see the vertical shift, that number should be very close to what the Topcon had, and as well as your vertical residuals for each point. So you can come down here and you can view each point and match those up and make sure that they match what Office 3D says. And I've already done that with mine, and I know that this is very close to what that was. So now I can say okay, and now my site is completely calibrated here. So you'll also notice that down here on the bottom where it says calibrated, so that means before I hit the compute button and hit OK, that said just grid right there. So now we have a fully calibrated site. So now we could bring in the rest of our files and continue moving along. So I'm going to go back over to my files, and now I'm going to bring in my surface. So I'm just going to grab that DXF surface. I'm going to drag and drop that in. And this is just the triangle tin from the Topcon 3D Office, and you'll see here that it's going to need to be turned into a surface. So right now it's just going to be the line work, so we're going to have to create the surface from this data. So you'll see here that it's on a layer. If I click one of these triangles, you'll see, if I look at the properties, it's a CAD 3D face up here, and it's also on the layer called College Square TN3. So what I can do is I can turn off my points layer and just have the tin showing, and I'm going to go to the surface tab and I'm going to say create surface. So I'll name this the same thing as what it was named before, College Square, and I'll just call this TN3. And I can say this is my design surface. And members to select, I'm going to put my cursor in this box. I'm just going to window everything and select it all and just hit OK. And that will now create the tin surface. Okay, so now I have a surface here, and I can expand this. I could turn off the TN3 line work, and you can see now I have a tin. So typically you're not going to need that line work anymore, so I'll just turn that off, and I'm not going to really need the surface at the moment, so I'm going to turn that off. So now I'm going to go over to my files, and I'm going to grab the line work DXF, and I'm going to drag and drop that in. give it a second to generate. I don't want to view the import summary. And then now I have my Linework file. So we can zoom in, make sure everything looks good. All my layers came across, and then we just want to make sure that the points line up with the project, and they do. And also my TN3 is also here underneath everything. So everything right now is ready to go either to the data collector or to the machine. So the next step is going to be preparing the files to go onto a USB stick to load the machine or the data collector. So we're going to go to the construction data tab, click on the job site manager, and create a new site. And we're just going to name the site whatever we want. And if we're just going to a machine, we can leave the site controllers blank. If we do have an older GCS 900 machine, we could create the files for it as well, but we're just going to an Earthworks machine, so we're just going to leave all these blank and just hit OK. Okay, we're going to go here to the project library, hit select, and we're going to change this to folder. New folder called College Square, just hit OK. And that's going to set up our folder for the Earthworks files, and we can just leave everything else in this job site manager blank. So the site calibration, everything else will be taken into the project. So just leave everything else blank here and hit close. And then we're going to go to the create design. We're going to call this whatever design we want. If you want to put the date there, you could. So I'll just call this College Square Finished Grade. Hit OK. It's going to ask us for the model type. We're going to hit Edit. We're going to choose Surface. And there's the surface, the only one that's in our project. College Square TN3. Hit OK. Stakeout points we can skip. Design map. So this is where we're going to choose the line work that goes out to the machine. So what I'll do here is I'm going to turn off the points layer and also turn off my surface. So right now I'm just viewing the DXF that was imported in from Office 3D. So you can select everything as a window like this, or you can also go to your Project Explorer, highlight the Linework file, right click and say select members. So either or is going to take your Linework file and select all the members. We're just going to hit the plus minus button on here. It's going to say that there's 8,399 objects. We're going to hit add, and then we're going to hit OK. And then we're just going to hit close. So next, we're going to go up to the publish to library. It's going to find that there's 4 items to publish. Site calibration. We don't have control points, and the site map's not going to go, but we're just going to make sure that we have these items to go. Click on publish, and it's going to take a few seconds, and we'll get a confirmation that the data was sent to the correct folder. Now it says the items were published successfully, so we can click OK. And now we could go to our file folder, and we go to our project library. So we go to the C drive, project library. This is where the data gets sent to. And we're going to just browse into our projects folder. There's our College Square, into Office data, and then there's our design. Now we're going to plug a USB stick into our computer, and we're going to copy the files over to the USB stick. So on the construction data tab, next to the publish to library, there's a library to USB drive. So we're going to click on that, and it's going to bring up all the information about our project, and it's going to show us the USB drive location. So I have it plugged in, and it's showing me that it's the D drive, and the folder that's going to make is called Project Library. So we're just going to go ahead and hit copy, and the files are now going to be copied to our USB. And if we want to go check those, we could just go back to our file folder and click on our USB drive, and I'll bring that over. So I'm browsing the USB drive. There's my project library. If I open that up, go to projects, my College Square project, office data, and then under designs, I should have that square finished grade model. So it appears that everything has been copied correctly, and now the USB is ready to go into the machine to copy the files to the machine.